So, welcome everyone. This is Sani, the podcast that celebrates African scientists. I'm your host, Alex Nyako. I'm a research associate at Avery Dennison, and today I'm hosting the podcast with.
Selassie Wiafikwache, and I'm a postdoc at the University of Maine.
So, today we are joined by Dr. Mohand Saed. He is a Royal Society University Research Fellow at the University of Cambridge in the UK, where he focuses on developing smart and sustainable stimuli responsive materials. So welcome, Mohand. Thank you so much for joining us today on Sani.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Selassie, for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Mohand, we'd like to dive into our conversation for this morning. And we always like to begin by trying to go back to the background of our interviewees and really try to understand their career trajectory, how they've gotten to the point where they have achieved now. So how does your past experiences, how does your upbringing, your schooling, how has it influenced and shaped your career path as you pursue the field that you're currently researching?
Absolutely. So my experiences and my background definitely influenced my career like everybody else. Let me start by giving a proper introduction about myself. So my name is Mohand Saed. I'm the Royal Society Fellow at the University of Cambridge. I have my own research group in the University of Cambridge. And I also co-founded a startup company called Cambridge Smart Plastics. So going back to, I was born and raised in Sudan, and I did all of my study and my schooling in Sudan. I finished my undergraduate in chemical engineering. I did chemical engineering because since growing up, I used to love chemistry and stuff like that. So after I finished my bachelor degree in chemical engineering, I moved to Saudi Arabia to work at the gold manufacturing factory. I stayed there for only a few months, and then I got the opportunity to move to the United States to study a master's degree to advance my study. So I did enroll in master's degree in mechanical engineering. So I switched topic from chemical engineering to mechanical engineering because I thought mechanical engineering just give you a wider opportunity to get basically a job. So during my master's degree in mechanical engineering, I did very well. Like most of us African people, when we go to the West, we usually do very well. So I did very well in my master's degree. And before I finished I remember my supervisor asked me to basically offer me a scholarship to stay. At that time, I didn't really think that I want to do academia or anything like that. I just want to get a degree and then get a job so I can support myself and support the folks back home in Sudan. But I did because I really enjoyed the work of my work during my master's degree, which is about material science. You know, I used to test material for biomedical devices, so I really enjoyed it. And when he offered me the scholarship about basically making new material called liquid crystalline elastomers, so my supervisor got a big grant to basically to do research on this material called liquid crystal elastomers. And during my PhD, I did incredibly well during my PhD, and I was able to basically come up with a new way to make this material, which makes it accessible. And before my master's degree, this material has been incredibly difficult to make. I think I can count only 5 research group around the world knew how to make this material. But since my PhD now, everybody around the world using the material that I have developed during my PhD. And just before I finished my PhD, I still plan to go back and then find a job in the industry. But my PhD supervisor has a friend in Dallas, in University of Texas. Basically asked him, hey, if you have a student that wants to do a postdoc, I have basically an opportunity. So I went there in Dallas. I stayed for 1 year in a project. I did pretty well there in a project related to 4D printing and advanced manufacturing. And then I got an opportunity to move to the UK to advance my study in the field of the liquid crystal and elastomers. So in 2019, I moved to the UK. In the UK, so University of Cambridge, one of the best places to study this material, like the liquid crystal material or polymer. So I moved there. I worked with people that actually discovered this material back in the 80s. So it was a very interesting experience. So they're physicist folks. So they do a lot of physics. So they understand the material from physical sides. But my background has been in material formulations. So basically, I collaborate with these people. They envision the material, and then I go to the lab and then make the material happen. That's what I do. So we did very well. So I think during COVID, where everybody like sits home, like we decided, okay, we have a very interesting material in our hand, which is the liquid crystals. So we can see a lot of application for this material, especially in robotics or in energy applications or biomedical applications. So we decided basically to make a startup because we're just sitting home and stuff like that. So we did the startup, and then in 2020 we won grant. 2022 we won also grant, and in 2023 we landed our first customer. So we co-developed some application, which is going very well. So it's a very complex background, but that's how I ended up here.
Talking about your startup just a little bit more, you just gave us like a very brief background to how it started. But can you just go in a little bit more into what exactly you do as a startup?
I work with this material, liquid crystal elastomers. These are new materials. I actually initially started as an idea with a physicist in France. He said, okay, if you combine this liquid crystal with this elastomer, you get a material that behave like muscles, facial muscle, which can be used in robotics. And also this material is phase changing, so it can have many potential applications.
Okay.
But the idea of making a startup to commercialize this material makes sense because we understand the material. Nobody else understand the material. We need to just make the first step. So we basically to build some demonstrator from this material, so we can basically commercialize. And we've been successful so far.
Okay, that's really interesting. Like you took an opportunity and decided to ride on that opportunity. Just going back to liquid crystals for our viewers and our listeners who don't know more about this, can you tell us more about your current research focus in layman terms involving these polymeric materials having smart and stimuli response? Because you just talked about how the materials like a muscle and applying it to AI. And then also just talk about the main areas or problems that your research is trying to address.
So we're working with this smart polymer. Generally, we call it smart polymer, or this material that can respond to outside stimulus. You can basically, it can change shape, color, or physical property. For example, Alex comes from a adhesive background, so we can make this material change the stickiness, like when we change the temperature or light or electricity or magnetic field. So the idea behind this material is basically is a material that can change its physical property when you change the environment.
Okay.
So that's how we define it. And this material has so many applications. For example, drug delivery, like soft robotics and energy applications. So it has a great potential.
Okay, so when you talk about going back to it in more, again, layman terms, so when you talk about, for example, muscle, like when we talk about that application, are we looking at like, these soldiers that maybe, or people that are amputated, like, is that where we are kind of looking at, or is it something different?
Yeah, you could see a use of this material in that aspect for like prosthetic hands, but we more focus on soft robotics. For example, everybody now moved to automation, so we're gonna see.
Okay.
I believe the future belongs to robotics. I don't know what we're gonna do in the future, but in robotics, we need this material to move or to do something, right? For example, if you need a gripper, a robotic that can grip and move. So our material is the closest material that we develop close to our natural muscles. We actually call it artificial muscles. So imagine a factory that has a lot of robotics, and this robotic, you want this robotic, for example, to pack strawberry or tomato or something. So this material will act like in within the gripper, the robotic gripper that can basically move these objects. That's one application from it. We think that there may be like many potential application. And again, go back to the example of Alex. I know Alex came from adhesive background. Now most of these adhesive are single-use adhesive, so they're not reversible. So one and done. So we can envision adhesive built from the material, that the smart material, we call it the smart adhesive, that basically you can use this adhesive to be reversible. So you can use it 1 time, 3 times, 4 times without throwing it away. And then you can actually envision using the adhesive property as the robotic itself. So for example, if you want to move something, you can stick it and then unstick it. So both these materials are responsive to environment. Basically, you can shine light to, for example, stick it, shine the light, and stick it, something like that.
Yeah, that's very interesting applications. I was also thinking about, so what currently are some of the main hurdles within stimuli responsive liquid crystal polymers that your group is trying to address?
So again, this material is still in the lab scale, so scaling up will be a huge challenge, because I work as a CTO of the company, but I also run my own research group in Cavendish, so I kind of see both sides. So the scaling up of this material will be an enormous challenge. For example, when we talk to people like from your community, for example, the adhesive community, everybody loved it. I remember when I gave the presentation in the Adhesive Society, people from 3M or Dow or all the usual suspects in the adhesive space, they all interested in the material. But when we tell them the cost of the material or the scale how we make this material, they all like, okay, this is too much, this is too expensive for us. But definitely the scalability will be like the biggest challenge.
It's very interesting work. Thank you for sharing. So Mohand, I wanted to talk about what are some of your memorable highlights and lowlights in your research. When we speak to our interviewees, they really share interesting stories when it comes to this aspect.
Absolutely. Like as a researcher, like we always gonna have like highlights and lowlight. But I remember that the memorable highlight that I have a couple, but one of them is basically when we discovered this material. When we discover how to make this liquid crystal during my PhD, immediately we think, oh wow, this is really could change the field of the liquid crystals. So definitely this had made me like very famous in the field. So kind of everybody now uses the material that I developed. So kind of thrill to think about it that way. And the other highlight is actually happened like recently, maybe a few months ago, where through our startup company, we landed a collaboration with eyewear company that basically they make eyeglasses, the biggest in the world. So we collaborate with them. We develop for them smart plastic called shape memory polymer that they will use in their factory. So all the future glasses will be made from the material that we develop in our company. I won't talk more about this because we have a confidential agreement with them. This is very, very exciting for us. And the laws, like we have many laws, during the like experiment doesn't work, or you miss some important, I don't know, like, some wedding back home, you can't go because you have something to do or some conference to go.
And so looking at your experience so far with research with your startup company, this is very impressive. And most of our listeners are young aspiring scientists. So what advice will you leave for these young aspiring scientists in Africa?
I don't know, this seems cliche, but I think is a very simple, just don't give up. People will doubt you, but you just have to keep going and prove people wrong, people that doubt you wrong. Simply don't let anybody dictate your dream. If you have a dream, I think you can do it if you just believe, but you need to practice self-discipline and work hard and just go do it. I think you will.
Yeah, this has been very inspiring and engaging. Just listening to you, Dr. Said, going through your background, how you reached here, I think it's very exciting to be working with a material that, you know, anytime you hear someone is using it, there's this thrill that comes with it of being like you were part of the making of this material. And thank you so much for joining us and talking to us about your research and about your startup, and also just sharing your experience. And so thank you all for listening to us. Again, you can find us on Facebook as Sani, on Instagram at Sani Podcast, and then on YouTube, if you haven't subscribed, remember to subscribe as Sani Podcast. Don't forget to like or share, and send us your comments on today's episodes, and see you at our next session.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you. Bye.